Hello everyone, just wanted to talk you through kind of a know before you go. If it's your first time to Breckenridge or you haven't been there a ton of times, but you kind of want to learn a little bit more about the mountain and kind of how to make the best of a day, or just kind of know the generalities around each respective mountain or peak as they're known there. So that's what this is. First and foremost, looking at the trail map, if you start off in the gondola parking lot where most people do, that kind of takes you to either peak 7 or peak 8. Oftentimes from town, people oftentimes find themselves also going to the bottom of peak 9 as well. So if you look at this thing from a whole, you have peak 10, peak 9, peak 8, all the way up to the very top of Imperial, peak 7, and their newest terrain, peak 6. So obviously I went from 10 to 6, but of course it's pretty easy chronological. It's actually from north to south if you're following the range, if you care about that stuff at all. But again, if you go from the parking lot, typically this gondola is kind of a main meeting area. Gondola goes up, has a couple switch stations, can drop you off at 7 where there's one lift. It's Independence. But oftentimes a major meeting spot for most people is at, in fact, peak 8. Peak 8's great because it has some really nice greens, a lot of classes and stuff for young kids and people learning to ski. Peak 5 gives you nice access to Powerline and Springmire, which is just a very simple green to kind of get your ski legs underneath you. You can take Colorado Super Chair. The line gets really long. That goes all the way up, giving you access to Springmire, which the top is blue. So if you're just a green person and you want to hit this blue, it's a little short segment, but it kind of levels out really nicely. But keep in mind that it does have a blue top to it. It is a slow zone. It's actually 4 o'clock in Springmire, I should say. Right next to that is the Rocky Mountain Super Chair. Takes you up, gives you some access to some blacks here. And moreover, Duke's Run as well, which gives you a nice blue that runs all the way down. You can also run that all the way over to North Star via a little small catwalk on Columbine here. These blacks here, like Little Johnny, this gets bumped out and moguled out, as do a lot of these greens here. I think, in fact, it's Spruce or High Anxiety is a good fast run if you like fast, straight blacks. One thing to be really mindful of, though, is on peak 8 and peak 7. In fact, you know what? Peak 9 as well. All of these flatten out at the bottom. That's one thing about Breck. Breck has like a line. It's basically kind of right here if you follow my mouse. That line, things get kind of flat down here. So oftentimes you find yourself on a good run coming down any of these blacks or blues or even greens, and then things flatten out and you're kind of cruising. It's good because maybe you can kind of rest your legs that way, but if you're looking for more sustained speed, you might want to look elsewhere on the mountain. Peak 7 is really playful at the top. You can see these sparser trees. You can hit a lot of this stuff and it kind of you can just kind of play through these trees a little bit and then jump out into some of these blues, like Wire Patch, like Claim Jumper. They're all pretty fun, but again, they get flat. What gets confusing for a lot of people is if you're trying to get back to down to the base of 7, sometimes while you can hit Claim Jumper here, you might find your way going right and all of a sudden you're back at 8, and then maybe your party kind of went down this way because sometimes on the mountain you might get slightly separated, some faster skiers, slower skiers, whatever, people who stop. So that does happen. It's happened to me a few times, and I think I'm pretty good at navigating things sometimes, but you'd be amazed at what the mountain can do to you, especially with how dense the trees are in Breck. Again, playful on top. All these are really fun. This Monte Cristo that runs back, very flat through here. So keep in mind once you get here, it's just kind of a flat ride back. You can kind of ride off to the sides a little bit, go through the trees, kind of play around and jump a little bit, but you're going to have a lot of traffic oftentimes here as well. And that's pretty true from peak 8 and peak 7. Peak 8 is really highly trafficked. So if you want to find some stuff where you're less people, go peak 7, and even moreover, go peak 6. Doesn't always open early. Sometimes this thing takes a while to open. I don't really know the times. But to do that, you go to peak 7, go to the top of Independence, and then kind of cruise over. There's some fun stuff here if you want to hit some glades. Wanderlust more like kind of a fun little, I don't want to say toboggan run, or like a what do you call those things, like a bobsled run, but it's some fun stuff there. This gets you over to 6, and 6 is really fun. If you're looking for good fast blues, it does flatten out at the bottom here, but these are really fast actually. In fact, if you're used to places like Mammoth and places in California, they have this like concept of a blue black, and oftentimes a blue black is like it's in between, right? But you get above tree line here. It's really high. Oftentimes the winds are incredible, so it's not open. It's really windy. But running the face of this is Reverie, this thing is really fun to run. And once you get into this, actually, there's some bigger trees here, but you can fly through here. And in fact, it's a lot of fun. Haven't done Intuition Bowl. Sometimes it's closed off. You can run this Bliss. It's kind of a bowl, and you can also hike to terrain. I have not done this, but obviously you can see it's expert only. Peak 6 is in fact one of my favorite places to run if the weather permits and it's not too windy, because Breck is notoriously windy. The wind rips right over the top of this range, and it gets really cold, and sometimes it gets socked in with low-lying clouds as well. But if Peak 6 is open on a bluebird day with no wind, you are set, honestly. Really, really fun place to ride. So that is Peak 6, 7, and 8. What I didn't talk about is the top of 7 and 8. And this is probably some of the best terrain if you like to hit some steeper stuff or some bowls or some glades. And I'd say it's probably semi-famous. It's the Horseshoe Bowl T-Bar. So T-Bar, 2 people, oftentimes one snowboarder, oftentimes falling and getting dragged up. It's kind of hilarious to watch, but I've also fallen off this thing with skis, so I really can't say much. Once you get to the top of this, weather permitting, because this thing does close down because of wind again, really fun to hit the bowl. This map does not do it justice. You hit the top of this thing, you have to ski over to get to the middle of this bowl. So this thing, trail maps are hard to represent on a 2D plane. Everything that's going on with, a mountain basically. So you have to kind of ski over for a while and then drop into Horseshoe Bowl. So it's not just go up here and drop straight down the middle. What's really fun though is I love this line right here, and running like Pika in this Cucumber Bowl. This thing does not do justice as far as what you see on the map here. This is actually a much bigger area of glades than is shown right here. And so once you kind of run Pika down, and then you cut across the T-bar lane, and then you run this thing down. And this area is super, super fun. Again, really good glades, some fun jumps, really playful stuff, jumping over little trees and stuff. The same is true at the bottom of Pika. If you go all the way down, you can actually go down to hit this Y chute. This does not do it justice. It's actually kind of easy to hit. So I keep skiing over this stuff and just reverse all the way over. Y chute's super fun. It's steep and you can hit it pretty fast, and it goes right down to the top of Independence on 7. You can ski lower Forget-Me-Not down back to Horseshoe Bowl, and then of course back up and rinse and repeat. Forget-Me-Not's really fun too. This little chutes area is really fun. It does hold some nice powder stashes along with a lot of this stuff. So even if stuff skied off, you still get a number of powder stashes that are kind of stored in here, and you just gotta kind of hunt for it. If you're up for that stuff, this whole area is really fun to explore there. I haven't run directly through Horseshoe Bowl a ton. If you get it after a fresh, deep powder day or a dump the night before, then by all means hit this. Otherwise, you might find some more stashes in different areas where this isn't a skied off. So that is, that's the top of 7 and 8. This stuff's really fun. Of course, you can do a lot more. You can hike all this stuff by taking Imperial Express, which you have to get to through 6 Chair or the top of Horseshoe T-Bar, T-Bar, and then you can run this stuff here. I haven't done all this, but again, if you're more for extreme stuff, keep in mind it's going to be corniced, and you're going to have some chutes in between rocks and stuff as well. So if that's your forte, go hit it. Moving south on the mountain, going back down to some very similar stuff. Peak 9 runs a lot like Peak 8. Crowds, they're probably a little less than 8, but it's still really crowded over here. Mostly because Lower Lehman, Frontier, and this whole entire Quicksilver chair has really good access to some solid greens. So it's a lot of families and kids and people learning to ski or board there, which obviously is great because, you know, why not share the love? If you start off at 8, by the way, and you want to get to 9, you got to run this 4 o'clock along the ridge here. And then eventually you get this sawmill. This thing cuts off somewhere. Oh, it's actually right here. You cut this thing off and run this down. This is kind of playful. It's kind of like a little, got some walls to it. Run sawmill down. You can take C chair up or run it all the way down to this Beaver Run super chair. You can see here lots of blues, lots of greens, and also blacks. Now this doesn't do it justice, but this is kind of this kind of peaks out here. This is like a flat face, but this all turns back, and this is some really, really steep stuff here. Mine Shaft and Devil's Crotch, these things are all really bumped out and really, really steep as well. I wouldn't do that unless you love that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you're in for some hurt. I've caught myself on these a few times, and I don't really find them that fun, honestly. Doing steep bumps is not my thing. If it is, E-chair is the way to get to that. And of course, you have more chutes up there. More playful stuff on top. This 6 chair, again, playful trees and glades. You can kind of make all different runs out of this. Good, fun stuff there. But again, you can see all the chairs here. A chair, I think, is a really old, rickety chair, I believe. But Mercury Super Chair, run this thing all day. You can get some really good runs. I think your morning runs are really great here. Run this thing up and then run Briar Rose or Cashier. And these little glades in between are actually really fun because you can kind of just like shoot through these things, pop out into the groom section, and then run back down and do that the entire time. Again, it does get flat at the bottom though, so keep that in mind. And everything collects into one, like most resorts, bringing you back to your chair. Yeah, there's obviously some blues here or some blacks here as well. This thing's a big giant ravine, so this Upper Lehman. So you can actually jump up or, you know, cruise down this way. Again, this 2D representation of a obviously very 3D, you know, terrain doesn't do it full justice, but it is all right there. You know, keep in mind that all these yellow areas are family zones and they're slow zones. So if you're looking to bomb these things and just rip them, you might find ski patrol telling you to slow it down. Or the folks in the, I think yellow or blue, different colors. You'll see them all over the mountain. They work for Vail Resorts. That brings us over to Peak 10. So I said before that I love the T-bar and this stuff here. I love Peak 6. I also love Peak 10. Peak 10 is great. It's all black. It's all expert only. So if you're not looking for blacks, don't go there. Cruise over to Peak 10, run the Falcon Super Chair. This is really fun. You can rip it all day long. Double Jack, Centennial, Crystal. This is the face that runs right under the chairlift. All really good. Not too steep. You know, if you want to explore some blacks and you're more of a blue person, not bad. You can go do this and kind of just make some wider, longer turns. Just watch out for people who are a little more expert because they might get annoyed at you a little bit. Gets flat at the bottom, but you can rip these things. Are really fun. All this Dark Rider, Blackhawk, Mustang stuff, Trinity, it's all double black diamonds. It's not because it's super steep. It's because it's heavily gladed, lots of trees. So that skier's right. Come off this way. Really fun stuff. Cruise it back down to 10. Rip this all day long. This lift tends to run a little longer because it's experts only. Or sorry, longer. It actually goes quicker. You're not going to find the same crowds you're going to find at both 8 or 9, so this is actually really good to run. I think they increased the payload or the passengers like 2 years ago as well. I think it's a 6 now. Really fun to run this all day. The Burn, this is really fun. This is glades. It kind of runs right off into this Upper Lehman. Really fun to run this. There's some stuff that's a little wider, and some of it's a little more dense. The very top of this is actually kind of fun to traverse. It's not as dense of trees, so a little more sparse, but you can kind of just play yourself way through here, then cut down to Upper Lehman. And kind of Upper Lehman's fun too. You can kind of rip through here, and there's some offshoots and stuff where you can kind of a lot of jumps for them. That is Breck at a glance. I know when I first go to resorts, I look at different maps. I love studying trail maps. You try to capture the stuff in your head so when you get there, you can, of course, at least have some mental image when you see it in person. Breck is big. I think it's about 3,000 acres, roughly the size of maybe a little smaller than Mammoth. Not nearly as big as Vail. It's it's a little bigger than Heavenly, probably, in that same category as like Jackson Hole, Heavenly, Squaw, Mammoth, and obviously a number of different resorts throughout Colorado as well. But it's fun. It gets packed. It gets windy. There's some good stuff to do. Locals like it, but also some locals stay away because it does get so packed and it does get so windy, and you have other options. But if you're coming to Colorado for the first time, it's hard to beat the town of Breck. So it's not just about the day you have on the mountain, but it's of course the après-ski experience. And Main Street is really killer. The shops are awesome. The bars and restaurants and just kind of cruising up and down Main Street is really fun. So great way to check out Colorado for the first time. That is Breckenridge at a glance. Hope this helped. If you have any comments or questions, of course, leave them below this, and I'm happy to answer them. I'm sure the community of people who like to ski this will either contribute or tell me where I was wrong. Thanks.